Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into what's really an incredibly complex intersection of social media, technology, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
It really is. So much going on there.
Exactly. And our mission, well, our listener has provided this fascinating stack of sources, articles, research, even personal notes. And our goal is to pull out the most important insights, maybe some surprising facts, and just help you, our listener, understand the nuances.
Yeah, how these digital platforms shape and, are shaped by this whole conflict.
Right. And there's this core tension, isn't there? You see social media as this, well, almost vital tool for activists trying to get global attention.
Like that Muna El-Kurd quote, "We feel social media is the only way left. Every post, tweet, video makes a difference." Really captures that desperation almost.
It does. But then on the flip side, these same platforms face just intense pressure, scrutiny, and that often leads to, well, unintended consequences or these accusations of bias. So we'll explore how things like content moderation, tech partnerships, and these bigger geopolitical forces play out online, and how that impacts things like freedom of expression, human rights, fundamental stuff.
Absolutely.
So looking at the sources around the May 2021 conflict, it gets stark pretty quickly. This contrast between, activists hoping for reach and then the reality of content just disappearing.
Yeah, the pressure on the social media companies was almost instant.
How so? What did that look like?
Well, the Israeli government engaged directly. The sources detail then Justice Minister Benny Gantz holding Zoom meetings, this was May 2021, with top execs at Facebook and TikTok.
Right. People like Nick Clegg, Joel Kaplan at Facebook.
The very same. Gantz was public about demanding quick action on content, he said, incited violence or was disinformation.
And the platform's initial reaction?
Initially. Condolences specifically to Israelis. The sources know there was no mention of the hundreds of Palestinians killed at that point. And Israel later reported Facebook was, quote, far more responsive to their takedown requests in that first week.
That's quite a tilt. So what about the Palestinian side? There must have been outcry about their posts being removed.
Oh, absolutely. And the narrative did shift, publicly at least. Later, Facebook execs, Clegg and Kaplan included, they met virtually with the Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh.
And what came out of that?
An apology, actually. Facebook apologized for mistakenly removing posts with keywords like resistance or martyr. They said they'd reevaluate how they assessed content.
But no specifics on how.
No, not really. No concrete details offered. Facebook did say they were setting up a special operations center with Hebrew and Arabic speakers to try and manage things, make sure policies weren't violated.
Okay, so assurances were made, a special center was set up. Did things actually change for Palestinian users on the ground? What was the lived experience?
Well, the sources suggest not really. Unfortunately, despite those assurances, the censorship of Palestinian posts, it just continued. It followed what one source calls a predictable path over the last decade.
Predictable. So specific examples.
Plenty. Muna El-Kurd again. Her post from Sheikh Jarrah, using the hashtag #SaveSheikhJarrah hashtag, really crucial for visibility. They reportedly disappeared from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Just gone.
Vanished. Instagram even put graphic warnings on text-only posts, apparently, and live streams became inaccessible. The company later blamed a technical glitch.
The glitch.
Yeah, one they claimed also affected places like Colombia, indigenous communities. Kind of a broad explanation.
Okay, what else?
Mohammed El-Kurd, another activist in East Jerusalem, his Instagram stories had severely limited reach. Facebook employees apparently didn't know why initially.
And the reason given.
Again, technical glitch. But this was despite an internal acknowledgement suggesting they should minimize our over-enforcing on content from Palestine. So it seems there's some awareness internally.
That's uncontradictory. Awareness, but still blaming glitches.
It does. And then you have these really arbitrary examples, like a Palestinian man's birthday wish for his baby son named Qassam removed.
Why? Because of the name.
Presumably because of the association with Hamas's military wing. But it was clearly just a birthday post. Iyad Al-Rafai from Sada Social noted Facebook just didn't differentiate between any context.
Context seems key here.
Absolutely critical. Or another one. A man in Gaza posts a photo of a building before an Israeli missile hit it. Instagram took it down. They later reinstated it, but still.
Wow.
And maybe the most telling example of context failure Instagram removing posts about the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
The mosque itself.
Yeah, because they apparently confuse it with the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, which is listed as a sanctioned organization.
That's a pretty big mistake.
A former Facebook policy head, Ashraf Zaytoun, he didn't buy it, called it a lame excuse, suggesting it was really about not wanting to upset Israelis.
So these examples paint a picture. It's more than just mistakes, isn't it? It suggests a pattern of, well, context-blind moderation, a struggle to apply policy evenly.
Exactly. And it's not just about what gets taken down. It's also about what's allowed to stay up, which brings us to this whole issue of double standards.
Right. Tell us about that.
Well, a report from 7&, the Arab Center for Social Media Advancement, found something pretty stark. In May 2021, they looked at over 1 million public conversations in Hebrew.
Okay.
And found 183,000 of them contained incitement against Arabs, racism. Stuff like, a good Arab is a dead Arab, slaughter all Gazans.
And this content
Was not removed. It stayed up.
That's a huge contrast to a birthday message being removed.
A massive contrast. And it went beyond posts. WhatsApp groups were reportedly used by Israeli mobs to organize actual real-life attacks on Arabs and their businesses. Messages like attacks on Arabs, calls to bring weapons, leading to destruction, like a Bat Yam ice cream shop.
And those messages weren't removed either.
Often not, according to the sources. Then you have the Israeli cyber unit operating sort of secretly with the platforms.
How does that work?
They liaise directly with companies to get posts removed, but without any user consultation. It creates what's described as a closed-loop system. Content vanishes, no explanation, no appeal. Very opaque.
Okay, that's deeply concerning. Given all this, what are the critiques saying, both inside and outside these companies? What stands out to you?
Well, internally at Facebook, there was significant pushback. Around 200 employees signed an open letter in June 2021.
What were they asking for?
Protection for Palestinian voices, hiring more Palestinians, and transparency about government takedown requests. Someone even asked Zuckerberg directly about integrity systems failing marginalized groups, citing Palestine, BLM, indigenous women.
So, real internal dissent.
Yeah, and one engineer specifically noted Facebook is losing trust among Arab users. Externally, critics like Gillian C. York from the EFS put it bluntly, existing offline repression and inequality being replicated online.
Palestinians being left out of the policy conversation.
Exactly, and leaked documents seem to confirm this, showing execs worried about curtailing extreme speech against minorities because it might offend, quote, conservative partners.
Wow. Did Facebook itself ever acknowledge these issues?
They did, eventually. In a September 2022 report, their own report, they acknowledged unintentional bias during May 2021.
Unintentional bias.
Leading to an adverse human rights impact on Palestinians' freedom of expression, assembly, all of that. They admitted far more Arabic content was deleted than Hebrew.
And the reasons they gave.
Lack of Arabic speakers, institutional bias, and flawed machine learning. So, a combination of factors.
This really sounds like that concept of digital Orientalism, Western companies applying a sort of discriminatory lens, maybe unconsciously, to the Middle East. Does this pattern show up elsewhere in other conflicts?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the double standards become even more shocking when you compare. Look at Myanmar. Facebook allowed horrific genocidal posts against the Rohingya, which tragically contributed to mass violence.
Right, that was widely reported.
Ethiopia, too. Posts inciting ethnic cleansing stayed online despite promises to do better. But then Ukraine happens.
And the response.
Night and day. Swift action. Demoting Russian accounts, blocking them, warnings on links to Russian state media. Facebook even made a temporary exception, allowing calls for violence against Russian soldiers and leaders.
An exception for violent speech.
Yes. And they even allowed praise for Ukraine's Azov battalion, which they'd previously banned. A Meta spokesperson literally cited the war context to justify allowing violent sentiments.
That's a stark contrast to removing posts about resistance.
Incredibly stark. Critics say, basically, Facebook has no consistent policy on war, the rules keep changing, and is this giant, unaccountable corporation making these huge decisions.
Yeah.
Gillian C. York's take is pretty pessimistic. She argues these companies have no real reason to invest in fixing this, especially for marginalized groups in the global south, because the profit comes from wealthier users in the U.S., U.K., Germany, whose governments also hold sway.
And Mona Steida from 7&, called the double standard between Ukraine and Palestine simply shocking.
It's hard to disagree when you see the comparisons laid out like that.
Okay, so this isn't just glitches or lack of staff. It's policy, it's power, it's influence. And that brings us to the influence game. How does Israel exert so much pressure? What makes them so effective?
Well, the sources point to a couple of key things. Representation is one. Jordana Cutler has been Facebook's public policy director for Israel and the Jewish diaspora since 2016.
And her background.
Former advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu, chief of staff at the Israeli embassy in D.C. She explicitly said her job is to speak at Facebook on behalf of Israel and the Jewish diaspora.
Okay. And on the Palestinian side?
There's no equivalent. No Palestine-based representative. Arabs across 25 countries are covered by one chief based in Dubai.
Right.
And former employees have mentioned the Israeli team constantly pushing on takedowns and policy with no real countervoice for Palestinians internally.
So a structural imbalance in representation.
Seems like it. Then there's Facebook's dangerous individuals and organizations list, the DIO list.
What's the issue there?
It's described as a black box of uncertainty, very opaque, and it heavily reflects post-9/11 American foreign policy concerns. Over half the list is alleged foreign terrorists, mostly Muslim, South Asian, Middle Eastern, white anti-government militias, treated differently given more leeway.
And how does anti-Semitism factor into policy?
There's been significant lobbying for platforms to adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism.
The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition.
Yes. The aim, critics argue, is to label most criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic, conflating anti-Zionism with hating Jews. Facebook's VP of Content Policy, Monica Bickard, said they draw on the spirit and the text of the IHRA, treating Jews and Israelis as protected characteristics.
How does that play out with criticism of Zionism itself?
An internal document showed very little room for it. It mandated removing things like "fuck Zionists," even when the context was clearly about settlements or colonization, not Jews as a people.
Even though many Palestinians use Zionist in that specific political context?
Right. And the irony, sources point out, is while being tough on that, Facebook struggles with actual Holocaust denial and real anti-Semitism, and white supremacist groups still organize on the platform.
It seems incredibly inconsistent. What about the oversight board? Wasn't that meant to bring some independent judgment?
That was the idea, a sort of Supreme Court for Facebook. But its independence is questioned. It's funded by a Facebook trust, and a founding member is Amy Palmore.
The former Director General of Israel's Justice Ministry.
The very same. The one who previously pressured platforms to remove critical content. So her presence caused anger among Palestinians.
Did the board do anything on these issues?
They did weigh in. In September 2021, they overturned the removal of that post about Al-Aqsa Mosque in Sheikh Jarrah, saying it was removed in error. And they recommended an independent review of Facebook's Arabic and Hebrew moderation for bias.
So some pushback there, but maybe limited impact overall.
That seems to be the assessment. And it highlights the immense power, the lack of transparency, the potential for bias, intentional or just systemic.
Okay, so that's the social media minefield. But the tech entanglement goes deeper, right? Beyond just content feeds.
Oh, much deeper. This is where it gets really interesting, moving into broader tech partnerships and surveillance.
Like Project Nimbus.
Exactly. Project Nimbus, that's the huge U.S. $1.2 billion contract from 2021 for Google and Amazon to provide cloud services, AI, machine learning to the Israeli government and military.
And that caused controversy internally at Google and Amazon.
Big time. Staff protests, resignations. Ariel Karen famously accused Google of punishing dissent over it.
What exactly are the concerns about Nimbus?
Well, the advertised benefits are advanced AI for the Israeli state. One former Google security head basically said a goal was to shield IDF info from German investigators looking into potential ICC cases, an insurance policy against boycotts.
And the fear for Palestinians.
Anonymous Google and Amazon workers put it starkly. The tech will make systematic discrimination and displacement even crueler and deadlier.
That's a chilling prospect. Are there other, maybe more everyday tech examples?
Definitely. Look at mapping apps, Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze. They show Israeli settlements as just facts on the ground. But Palestinian villages,
What about them?
hundreds simply don't exist on the maps. Minimal data on the Palestinian landscape. Companies apparently blame UN rules, but sources call that an absurd argument.
So the digital map doesn't reflect the reality for Palestinians.
Not accurately. And then there's basic connectivity. Israel only allowed 3G in the West Bank in 2018. 4G rollout is still patchy, while Israel has 5G. It's a deliberate digital divide.
Wow. And all this alongside surveillance.
Pervasive surveillance.
Yeah.
We mentioned the cyber unit working secretly with platforms, but Israel also reportedly uses secret algorithms for pre-crime detection on Facebook,
Pre-crime.
targeting users based on supposed potential. Over 800 Palestinians apparently arrested before committing any violence based on this algorithm.
Were arrested based on an algorithm's prediction.
According to the sources, yes. And activists like Mona Shtaya talk about the constant fear, the self-censorship, living in this militarized space, worrying about every click.
It sounds exhausting and terrifying.
7 found the government has pushed platforms to remove documentation of protests, human rights violations, framing it as hate speech, especially since 9/11. Self-censorship is just rampant.
It brings to mind that quote from Shoshana Zuboff.
A democratic surveillance society is an existential and political impossibility. It really encapsulates the danger here.
So connecting these dots, the digital control, the surveillance, the tech partnerships, what does this mean for the bigger picture, the geopolitics, the ideology?
It feeds into what Jeff Halpert termed the Palestine Laboratory.
Meaning?
Palestine is this invaluable testing ground for new surveillance tech, weapons, crowd control methods, for a booming global pacification industry.
An industry selling security tech worldwide.
Exactly. And that border surveillance market, estimated at nearly US $70 billion by 2025. Israeli firms like Elbit are major players. Think higher walls, tighter borders, facial recognition, drones, biometric databases. This tech, tested in Palestine, could become the global norm, especially as climate change worsens displacement.
A grim forecast. And internally within Israel, what are the trends?
Demographics point towards a more conservative future. The Jewish population in the West Bank could hit 1.1 million by 2050. Ultra-Orthodox Jews might be a third of Israel's Jewish population by then.
Fueling ethno-nationalism.
That's the argument. An appeal to states sharing that commitment. Religious observance over multiculturalism, blaming the left. Thinkers like Yoram Hazony envision dominant majorities, a Christian one in the U.S., a Jewish one in Israel.
And we see echoes of this in political rhetoric.
Absolutely. You have Likud MPs talking about Arabs taking over the country, abusing Jews, wanting jail time for flying a Palestinian flag. You have ministers warning Palestinian students flying flags to remember 48, remember your Nakba.
That's a direct reference to the 1948 displacement.
A direct threat, essentially. And then Deputy Minister Matan Kahana saying, if there was a button to remove all the Arabs from here, I would press that button. Just blatant calls for ethnic cleansing.
Just shocking language.
Even mainstream figures acknowledge a shift. The Jerusalem Post editor admitted a significant percentage of Israel has taken a turn to the far right, borrowing terminology from white supremacists. Amir Haas at Haaretz called it a Jewish mutation, embracing messianic Jewish supremacism.
Are these just fringe views or more widespread?
Surveys suggest they're disturbingly widespread. A 2016 Pew poll found nearly half of Israeli Jews supported transfer or expulsion of Arabs. A 2022 study found 60% backed complete separation. Another poll showed a majority supporting expulsion of disloyal people.
That points to a real risk, doesn't it? Especially if there's another major conflict.
The potential for mass expulsion in a future war scenario is a terrifying possibility raised in the sources.
So given all this, the digital control, the ethno-nationalist drift, the surveillance state, where's the accountability, are there any forces pushing back effectively?
Well, the Israeli journalist Gideon Levy argues military might isn't enough, that Israel needs genuine international support it can't just buy with drones or tech. He thinks the world is maybe becoming less paralyzed by accusations of anti-Semitism, more willing to challenge the occupation.
But is there a practical cost right now?
The sources say no. No political or financial price being paid by Israelis for maintaining this system. And ironically, global instability, like the war in Ukraine, actually boosts Israel's arms industry.
What about international efforts? Boycotts, divestment?
There are some efforts. The UN Human Rights Council listed companies in illegal settlements back in 2020, Airbnb, Motorola, etc. But
very real impact.
Barely any public or political pressure, so they kept operating.
Yeah.
However, investor divestment is showing some movement. Norway's huge pension fund, KLP, dropped 16 companies in 2021 over human rights risks. New Zealand's super funds sold holdings in Israeli banks.
So maybe some financial pressure building?
Potentially. A 2021 survey found many investment managers expect human rights to become a mainstream concern. But it's slow. Human rights lawyers like E.T. Mack feel court battles are maybe over, needing a different approach.
And Israel's strategy to counter this?
Selling defense tech seems key. Insulating itself from political backlash? Providing tools like Pegasus spyware gives leverage, protection from censure. They desperately want to avoid being labeled like Russia.
It sounds like a fundamental conflict is emerging.
The sources frame it as a choice. Israel and its supporters have to pick between Zionism and liberal values. The reality of apartheid, as described by human rights groups, makes holding both impossible.
And the tech companies, where do they ultimately stand in all this?
That leaked 2016 memo from Andrew Bosworth at Facebook, now Meta's CPO, is pretty damning.
What did it say?
Basically, the goal is connection and data collection above all else. Anything that allows us to connect more people more often is de facto good. Even, he wrote, if someone dies in a terrorist attack coordinated on our tools.
He actually wrote that.
Yes. The loss of lives due to Facebook was apparently a risk worth taking. It points to a potential profit over people calculation at the core.
That's quite an admission.
It really is. And the conclusion many draw from these sources is stark. Without different platforms, without rejecting these rigged rules, marginalized groups like Palestinians will never get justice or a fair hearing.
Yeah.
And the model of ethno-nationalism plus unaccountable state power, which Israel exemplifies here, could lead to a truly frightening world globally.
So we've traced this arc from deleted social media posts all the way to global surveillance markets and ethno-nationalist ideologies. It shows just how deeply technology is now woven into these geopolitical realities. Patterns of censorship, influence, the fight for representation. Hopefully you, our listener, now have a much richer picture than you might get from headlines alone.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with, building on that Zuboff quote. We may have democracy or we may have surveillance society, but we cannot have both. After this deep dive, what does it suggest about where we're heading globally? What role are these huge platforms, Facebook, Google, TikTok, truly playing in shaping not just politics, but in maybe even human nature itself?
A lot to think about. What stands out to you after hearing all this? We hope this exploration has given you some powerful